Welcome to a very special episode of the Attic Antics podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, John Cariani. John Cariani is a Tony Award-nominated actor and an accomplished playwright. He made his Broadway debut in the 2004 revival of Fiddler on the Roof and received an Outer Critics Circle Award and a Tony Award nomination for his portrayal of Motel the Tailor. He originated the role of Nigel Bottom in the Broadway hit Something Rotten and received an Outer Critics Circle Award nomination for his performance. He also originated the role of Itzik in The Band's Visit, winner of the 2018 Tony Award for the Best Musical. Most people know John from his role on NBC's long-running drama Law and Order, on which he played forensics Tech Beck for 5 seasons. He also had recurring roles on CBS's Numbers and on IFC's The Onion news network. Almost Maine, as a playwright, is what John is best known for, his very first play, which premiered at Portland Stage Company in 2004, opened off-Broadway in 2006, and has since become one of the most popular plays in the United States and around the world. The play has received over 5,000 productions to date and has been translated into over a dozen languages. Also, John's book, Almost Maine, a Novel, which was released March 31st, has been received very well. John grew up in Presque Isle, Maine, and now lives in New York City. I hope you guys are ready for an amazing podcast. Without further ado, John Cariani. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Attic Antics podcast. That is the name of my podcast, John, in case you were wondering.
I know.
But today, we have a special guest, John Cariani, an actor, playwright, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Are
you going to tell me how we met?
Okay, yes. So we met in my drama class. Did the play Almost Maine that you wrote, and you did a big tour of like Zoom calls or Google Meets with schools that have done your play, and
we're doing it like right when the COVID-19 shut everything down.
Yeah, and
so I talked to schools that like had just done it, were about to do it, and whose productions got interrupted.
Oh yeah. So our school was lucky; we got to do it. But you want to know what's really tough? Have you heard of the musical We Will Rock You, the Queen jukebox musical?
Yeah.
Dude, so my class, we were doing that. That was our spring musical. And I was Brit, man. I was Brit.
Really?
Yeah, and it got canceled, man. I was really sad. That was like the hardest part. Because it's like quarantine, we always think about like how is this affecting me? That right there. That's the biggest thing that affected me.
Of course, yeah. And I was doing a show called Caroline or Change. We were about to do our first preview on March 13th, and on March 12th, all of Broadway got shut down.
Damn.
So we all know what that feels like.
Oh, that's really tough, man. Yeah, my classes, we were set to go to New York, go see some plays,
wow.
And then once Broadway got shut down, we were like, it's over, it's done.
Yeah, and it's going to be over for a while, and a lot of people are, there's a lot of sadness surrounding that, obviously, but I feel like right now the theater is not really relevant and it's not necessary. But when we come back, we are going to be tremendously relevant and tremendously necessary, and it's going to be a glorious return.
I like it. I love it. Yo, I had a question about I had a question about this quarantine. Has this like helped or hindered your like creative process more? Is it like does it give you a lot of time to like to work, or because I know that artists, they take a lot of inspiration from their just daily lives and just in how they use that in applying that to how they work. So I just wanted to ask you personally, like, has this helped or really has it been a pretty tough?
I mean, I'm kind of lucky. I'm a middle-aged guy, and I have enough to live for a while if I don't work. Um, so that makes me feel pretty lucky. I also don't have kids, and there's something about, I know my friends who have kids right now, it's difficult because everybody's home all the time, and school is happening at home, and parents are working from home. Um, it's a lot of fun in a lot of ways, from what I understand, because I know that parents and kids are reconnecting in ways and connecting in ways they haven't in a long time. But I just know that it's a lot, and I'm lucky because my husband retired in the fall from his job, and we've both been really, really busy since he retired. And this is kind of like and we also got married in the fall, and we haven't really had a honeymoon. So this quarantine is kind of like our honeymoon.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So it's like a stay at home honeymoon, and it's been really fun. We've been tackling projects around the house because we actually have time to do them and to do them well and slowly. I've learned that I don't get to do much slow. And I think I read this really interesting essay about, or I don't remember where it was. It was about how the way to go fast is to go slow. So like, I'm the classic person who, whenever I leave the house, I come back 5 times because I forgot stuff. Mm-hmm. And I read that the best way to not do that is to leave your house very slowly and make sure you have everything, and then you leave once. And that's been working. And I feel kind of similar during this quarantine. I like having time to read and think and go slow. I know it's a privilege, but I love the privilege. And I'm also learning that I just have no idea how long it takes to do anything. I think I can write a few emails in like a few minutes, and it takes me an hour to write a couple of emails. They're so difficult to compose. And I don't know, just living a little slower has been kind of nice, and not being able to go anywhere has given me all this time. And I've said this to a lot of young people: when you're at the beginning of in the early part of your life, you're creating. You haven't, like, when you're my age, you've planted lots of seeds and lots of stuff has grown. So for some people, that's kids, it's their career, it's for a lot of artists, it's whatever they're composing or writing or painting or creating. I just have time to tend to all the plays I started. Do you know what I mean? That I haven't had time to work on. So I've been kind of working on those. I've been reading a lot, watching a lot of TV, old TV shows, old movies, just to learn about stuff I don't know anything about. I've been watching a lot of old stand-up comics who I don't know, like, just so that I know who they are, because
it's so freeing, man. This time, it's like if we were to live this way all the time, like with no like obligations except to what we want, it's like that is true freedom. Like everybody talks about free will, this, free will, that. Like this is free will. You have the will to do whatever you please, and that, I think that's truly magical.
Truly. Well, and the rest of the world isn't. You're not missing out on anything. Like, what's that, FOMO they call it? Everybody always says FOMO.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
You're not missing out on anything because the world isn't continuing. That's changing now. We're moving back to continuing, But
yeah.
I've learned a lot about how long it takes me to do things, and I'm going to be better at scheduling stuff, I think.
Good. Yeah. No, seriously, like
how long it takes me to read something, how long it takes me to edit a friend's play. And I'm just going to work on not always feeling like I'm in such a rush all the time, because it makes me nervous and I can't think right.
Totally, man. This time has offered a lot of self-reflection in my personal experience. Have you like, because all you have all the time to do is just think and think and think. So has that been some of the biggest takeaways from your own self-reflection, the time management?
I would say time management, and I would also say remembering to daydream and like going for long walks. Like,
I love long walks.
There's not much to do, so we go for lots of walks with our dog, and I like going for long walks without my dog just because it's fun to think. And I like to go running, but it's a little tricky in New York City because the parks are pretty crowded, and the park I live in is pretty crowded. And so, I've read that when you're running, you're super spreading. So I haven't been running as much.
You're super spreading the virus?
Well, because the way you exhale, it just leaves a cloud behind.
I see.
And just learning, and you don't know if you're a carrier or not. Even if you're well, you don't know if you're carrying the virus and just asymptomatic. And
so
I get a little nervous about running because you see people without masks running, and I don't know.
Nice.
I want to be safe and make other people feel safe. So I've been just doing a lot of walking, but it's been nice to walk and think and daydreaming. Just daydreaming is fun and important. And you know what else I've been doing? I know it sounds crazy, but like lots of logic puzzles and math puzzles. I'm not even good at them, but it's just fun to like think deeply about things.
Yeah, no, really, really. I fully agree, man. So hey, I wanted to ask you this one question, man. So, in the talk you did with my class, one of the kids in theater in asked you how they could pursue their interest in like social justice, and you had a really interesting answer. You were talking about how you use your voice to give a voice to the voiceless, and in your experience, the people that you feel are the most voiceless is rural America and these towns that are like farming towns that are like almost a very good portion, not almost, they're a very good portion of this country. And so I just wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more on how you on the your inspiration as well as just how you go about giving a voice to the voiceless with your art.
Well, I don't know if they're the most voiceless. I don't know, but I definitely think that it's something that I didn't start out knowing or thinking about or believing, but it's something I've realized as I've worked as an actor and as a writer in the theater in particular. Um, you don't see rural people on Broadway stages. You don't see rural Americans on Broadway stages. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's not interesting to the people who go to the theater.
Yeah,
And
you use the term echo chamber.
yeah, I think a lot of what you see in New York City and New York City theater is a lot of a lot of people who believe all of the same things getting together, congregating, and listening to a story that affirms everything that they believe. And I'm not sure that those stories are reaching the people who might benefit those people. Like I'm not sure that the people who are not able to hear those stories. How do I say this? I'm not sure that those stories are reaching the people who it would be great if we could get those stories to. Does that make sense? It would be great if we could get those stories to people where I grew up in northern Maine, in rural northern Maine. But those people live far away from Broadway stages, far away from theater, because theater is an urban art form. It can't really survive in a rural location because there aren't enough people to get the butts in the seats to make the theater a viable, something that's viable. You need lots of people around to bring people together to fill seats in order to tell stories. I guess I've just noticed that a lot of the stories that are told are urban stories, or are stories that are interesting to urban people, are interesting to people of a certain political persuasion. And I guess it's just refreshing when you see other ideas, other stories, contrary ideas. One of the things I'm interested in is like I got to go to Yale to do a little talk with a group of theater students and they have a rural student theater, a rural student alliance at Yale, which I thought was interesting. It was founded by somebody who's from northern Maine like I am, and he's a lot younger than me. He's just graduated from college, but he found out about me and my play because I was from Presque Isle, Maine, and he's from Fort Kent, Maine, and which is way up north. It's on the Fort Kent's on the border, and I thought Presque Isle was about as far as you can go, and Fort Kent's past Presque Isle. But he was just interested in talking to me about my experience. And one of the things I've learned is that a lot of kids go to college like Yale. I went to Amherst College. When we go to college and we're from places that are rural, we're encountering ideas that run contrary to what we were raised to believe, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
If you're from New York City or San Francisco or from a city that's very liberal and your parents are liberal, well-educated people, when you go to college, everything you believe is reaffirmed. And when you're from a small town where more conservative values might prevail, when you go away to college, a lot of what you were taught is attacked. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a great thing. But it's difficult when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old sometimes to process that. And sometimes a lot of us feel like we're torn in two. We have our families who we love very much, who might hold very different political views and views in general from what we're learning in school. And sometimes I think professors forget how fragile young people can be and how vulnerable and delicate young people can be. And
yeah, man,
when you're asking people to reconsider everything that they've ever believed, it's pretty emotionally draining. And
truly, man.
It's tumultuous, And
So
that was what the conversation I had at the Rural Student Alliance at Yale was. Just there were a lot of people who are like, I'm a Mexican American woman, and I grew up in Illinois, and my parents voted for Trump, and now I'm at Yale, and sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to hate my parents because of what they believe, but I can't hate my parents because they're my parents, and I don't have the luxury of having parents who believe what all my professors believe.
It's like an
So
identity
it's a
crisis.
very strange place, and I just think that's something that people should think about because there are 75 million people who live in rural America. That's a lot of people,
Yeah, that's a
and
lot.
I think that we should think about what it. I feel like those people got loud in 2016 and raised the
Exactly.
ruckus. You know,
So yeah, you made a good point about that, about how Trump, the whole concept of going from Obama to Trump really just shows how people feel like they're not heard. So how do you reach the people with your message and your art that feel like they're not heard?
I don't know. And it's hard because part of me feels like they're heard all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what's confusing.
Yeah.
So when I hear like they feel like they're not heard, that's taken me a while to sort through that and figure that out.
So why do you feel like they're not heard? Or why do you feel like they feel like they're not heard?
I'm still trying to figure this out. I think that part of it has to do with, and this is all, anecdotes aren't data. So I'm talking about anecdotal experiences that people I've talked to from where I grew up. I do think people are quite aware that they're not, when you watch television, for example, when you watch Netflix and any streaming service, when you don't see, yet again, you don't see a lot of rural people and rural stories being told. And when you do, the people who are featured are often, they voted for a certain person for president, or they're addicted to drugs in some way, or they're not very well educated. And while those, people from rural places many did vote for a certain person for president, and there is the issue of drug addiction and opioid dependency going on in those places, and there is poverty and there is lack of education, but there's also a lot of people who didn't vote for that person for president. I mean, a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who, most people aren't drug addled, and most people are living pretty normal lives with all the complications that normal lives bring. And I guess I'm just a little bit interested in seeing that depiction of rural America, and maybe just a multi-dimensional, more complicated depiction. That's all.
Totally.
And this is something that I've just realized lately because I've only written 4 plays, and 2 of them are very much about set in rural places, and
A lot of
they
people aren't
deal
talking
with
about it.
issues that people in rural places are dealing with, and I'm interested in writing about people who don't have a lot, as far as they don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of opportunity, maybe, but that doesn't mean that they're joyless. You know what I mean? And it doesn't
Yeah,
mean they
totally.
don't have fun. Because northern Maine is one of the most beautiful places in the world to grow up, I think,
Mm.
because in the wintertime you can go snowmobiling and ice fishing and cross country skiing, and you can do it from like December. It starts snowing in October, November, and by the end of November, December, if you're lucky, you can start skiing and doing all the fun winter sports until like April or May. And then summers in northern Maine are so awesome because you don't need an air conditioner, So
That sounds like so
it's
much
like a
fun,
really
man.
great place to. There's lots to do, and you can go
Exactly.
boating and fishing in the summertime and run, and it's awesome. And I just want people to remember that there's awesome and ugliness in everything. And I guess I'm just, there's something I'm realizing, that's all. And it's just stuff I've observed over my years.
That's good stuff, man. So, do you feel like subconsciously, like with viewing the art that is now mainstream, that the people that voted for Trump after going through 8 years of Obama, they almost feel like the minority now in their representation?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I don't honestly don't know.
Yeah,
But,
it's just a
you
thought.
know, that hasn't been the conversations that I've had. The conversations that I've had just have been, kind of like we're not awful people. You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's
Yeah.
really what I've talked to my friends about, and just understanding difference, and understanding that like some of my friends from northern Maine don't understand the severity, say, of COVID-19 because in Aroostook County, the county that I grew up in northern Maine, there have only been 5 cases of COVID-19 in a population of the whole county is huge, but it only has about
Mm.
68,000, 67,000 people. But that's 5 cases in 67,000 people. And when and I live in New York City, and so I don't even know how many cases there are in New York City now. What are we up to? Something like 80 something thousand in the
A
city.
few.
I can't even. What was it? I don't even know where we are because I conflate the national statistics with the New York statistics, but I don't
It's
know. It's easy
insane.
to look up. But it's a lot of cases, and I know a lot of
Mhm.
people who have been affected by it. And I have a good friend who is suffering right now, and he's recovering, but it's been a long, slow recovery, and he was in the hospital for 6 weeks. And so
That's awful.
I take it a little more seriously. And my brother lives in North Carolina, and he has asthma, and he was in a car accident a long time ago and doesn't have a lot of lung capacity, and so he is just very scared because if he were to get this, he already feels as a compromised person it would be pretty devastating.
Wow.
My mom has had complications with her lungs, so we're just aware of how dangerous this could be for them. So we take it seriously because it could directly affect us in a very detrimental way.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
So I
Hey,
think we just have to remember why. I would say in northern Maine, they've been lucky that the country did shut down because there hasn't been much travel up there. So I feel like they've
mhm.
been spared. And I have a friend who works, for the Veterans Administration. So you have the Veterans Home, and you have the homes for older people. Those seem to be fine up there. But all it takes is one person, you know what I mean, to like
Yeah.
go in there and and who has
And
it, and it could be a
educate.
disaster.
So, hey, I had a question, man, that I just want to run by you. Do you feel like the real source of this lack of being heard comes from unfair stigmas and just as a whole? Because it's like there seems to be a lack of education, as you mentioned, especially when it comes to like when drug addiction as well. It's like they're like, oh, you're hurting, take these pills, and then they end up getting addicted and they don't even know. So do you feel that there's the cause of this unrest that we're feeling in our country is because of unjustified stigmas?
Well, like the unrest we're experiencing right this moment is about the relationship of the police to people of color. So right now, the answer is no. I think right now that's the issue, just in
Mm-hmm.
right this moment, and for a long time. What was the question again, Cameron? I don't know. What was Ask that again?
So it's like the people in rural America feel as if they you say they feel like they just want people to know that they're not bad people. And do you feel that the way to address um, this this issue is to just educate more people and
Oh yeah,
try to break these stigmas that we're
I don't
seeing?
know if I would say that they want people to know that they're not bad people. Like I don't know if that's what it is. I think what it is that I'm aware that my friends in New York City sometimes say things about people from the flyover states, or
Mm-hmm.
like one thing that irritates me is when people like will make some comment offhand about like the people of Iowa, for example, because Iowa
Yeah.
is a white state. And I say to people, Iowa said yes to gay marriage first, and the Iowa caucuses launched President Obama's run up to the presidency. So be careful what you say because it
Totally.
doesn't match with some facts, for example. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
I guess I would just say this is the issue. I have friends from northern Maine who say horrible things about New York City, and I have friends from New York City who say horrible things about the middle of the country.
Mm.
And I just want people to go to those places before they have strong
Mm-hmm.
opinions about them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Understand that we are pretty much the same and that there's very little different about us.
yeah, and I understand why right now it looks like New York is, or any city in this country right now is like under siege. But I'm looking out my window and it's a beautiful sunshiny day and I see a woman walking her dog. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, if you came, yes, these protests are happening, but by and large, the protests are very, Mayor de Blasio got on and made a statement a couple of days ago and just said, I want everyone to know that the protesters and the protests have been peaceful. And there was one
Yeah.
incident in which looters, smashed in some windows, and that's what gets,
Covered.
that's the news, that's the image that gets disseminated across the country.
Mm.
And that's the hard part, is that you're actually not there and you don't actually know. That's something I've been wrestling with right now. There's a big movement right now to raise money to unseat um, uh, people in Congress, senators,
Yeah.
men and women who are people that people say from New York City find repugnant or something, that,
Mm-hmm.
and people want to pour money into these races in all these other states. And I haven't completely thought this through, so this is a new idea, but I wonder, I don't know what's going on in Nebraska, so I don't know. I might support someone, but I feel like I don't know if that's right for someone from New York to be supporting someone, a campaign in Nebraska. I just am not sure. And
Hey
I
man,
might,
on
I
the
won't, that's all. I just don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because that's up to the people who live there.
yeah, totally. Hey, on the topic of these protests that have been going on, just as we were talking, Minnesota, they actually upped the charge of the officer to second-degree murder. What do you think about that?
Oh, I I don't know what I think because I haven't read it myself, but um, I I mean, when you watch that video, it's really hard to understand. I actually didn't watch the video. I've only seen like a little pieces of it. I don't really
Me
love
neither,
watch
man. Me
stuff like
neither.
that.
In
I'm a
my
I'm a
English
gamer.
class,
Would you say?
in my social justice English class, we've watched enough videos of police killing people for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And um, I forgot what did you ask me? I can't remember.
Well, the officer who
Oh
killed
no,
he
I
just
think this one is gonna. I mean, the protests are so much bigger and so much. I don't know. I'm just very excited. I'm hopeful. I'm really excited about where this is going to lead us. And
yeah.
the uh, chief of police from Phoenix. I don't remember her name, but she's a really interesting. What an interesting person and what an interesting perspective she has, because she's a black woman who's the police chief of a major city, and she has two sons who are in their 20s. And I
Oh,
think that's who we should be listening to, because that woman, that person,
she's
knows both
very
sides. And she talked about how she's trying to protect her officers and she's trying to protect her children. And I'm like,
mm,
I'm going to listen to that person because that person has both perspectives. And you know what I mean?
those are the people we need to listen to just as a whole in
Yeah.
our
And like,
world. People with multiple perspectives.
and I feel really bad for, um, I'm so sad that that had to happen to is it Mr. Floyd? Is that right? Is that the last name?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My husband's family is Lloyd. So I have called him Lloyd in the past. You know what I mean? Just because I get it confused. I'm in this show called Caroline or Change, which was written by Tony Kushner and Janine Tesori, and obviously we're waiting to see when we'll begin performing again. We were supposed to start in June. Obviously, Broadway isn't starting up in June, and then they postponed
Mm-hmm.
till September. But it's looking like Broadway won't be back until at least a year from now, when people
Yeah.
are comfortable congregating.
Wow.
And singers are super spreaders, so they have to figure out what to do about how to actually sing together on stage, because we spray so much stuff in the air,
Yeah.
But the sad part is the story is so relevant because it's a story of social justice. And
What is that story about? Carolina Change.
Carolina changes the story of a woman named Caroline who is the maid for a Jewish family, and the play takes place in Louisiana. So you have a Southern Jewish family and their maid Caroline, and Caroline befriends Caroline and the young boy. I played the father. The family, the Jewish family, is the Gelman family, and I play Stuart Gelman, and my son's name is Noah. And Noah and Caroline. Noah is fascinated by Caroline. He loves her. He wants to be her friend, but and Noah and Caroline. Noah is fascinated by Caroline. He loves her. He wants to be her friend, but she is the maid. She's not a child. She's not a caregiver to a child. So she keeps a healthy distance from Noah. But they're friends in their own way. But what makes this play interesting, from what I hear, is that it's one of the first plays written by white creators that fully dimensionalizes like a black character. Like she's not a saint, and she's not just
Totally.
a terrible person. She's a human being who has lots of good in her and lots of bad in her, like all human beings. And she's a complicated person, and you learn why she's complicated. Like she has lost a lot in her life. And the play is set in 1963, and JFK is assassinated. So there's the backdrop of social justice. And it's the story of Caroline and her family. The other main character is her daughter, Emmy. What a fascinating role that is.
Yeah.
And it's Caroline's relationship to the family, and basically how and the woman who plays my wife, my wife's name is Rose, and played by Casey Levy, and she has a really interesting role because she's the white woman who's trying to do the right thing, and I think people are going to hear her in a brand new way because she really is trying to do the right thing. And I think one of the things that we've talked about in rehearsal is that all white people can do right now is try and keep trying and just keep trying,
Just keep trying.
But the interesting thing is how relevant that story is going to be when we return. And I was wondering if it was going to be, because I was wondering with COVID-19 if that was going to be the issue of this year. And now we're back to it being about police brutality and
I think
racial.
this is a very necessary shift. I feel like the news was almost too focused on COVID-19. I know that's a weird thing to say because it's like a deadly worldwide virus, but it's like they weren't addressing any of the real social issues that we're still plagued with. It's not like these things just go away.
Right.
And I think that's really valuable.
And same with like other illnesses that people are having. I understand that there's going to be a whole series of babies who are not vaccinated properly because people haven't been going to the hospital. And
wow, that's a scary thought.
That's going to be interesting to see where that takes us. This is just stuff I read, so I don't know, but that's going to be interesting. Because like the life is going on while COVID-19 was happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the regular lousy and great things that happen were happening. But anyway. Did I answer your question though about what the play's about?
Oh, totally, man. What is it like collaborating with a writer in getting into your own character? Like, how do you balance your vision with their vision? When
you're an actor working with a writer?
Yeah, you're on both sides, so you have a pretty balanced perspective, like we were talking about.
Well, I think you're both just trying to do justice to the story that is being told, and collectively, the writers, the director, and the actors just have to decide which story they're telling. And one of the things, this Carolina Change was originally performed in 2004, and one of the things that I think is interesting about this revival, they're calling it, I feel like the Jewish family is getting getting fleshed out just a little bit more. I feel like the main story is of Caroline, but our director is from Britain, and so is approaching this as an outsider because he is not a Jewish American. He's not an African American. He is approaching this from the outside. As a result, there's something really interesting about how fully the stories are being fleshed out. And they could have been well fleshed out the last time. I didn't actually see the production. I only saw it on video. And from my perspective, I felt that the story of Caroline overwhelmed the other stories, and that may be the way it's supposed to be, that may be perfectly valid. But and maybe it's because I'm in it too, Cameron. Just because now that I'm in it, maybe I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
the story is being told differently, and it might not be being told differently at all. But I'm appreciating the how fully all of the stories of all of the characters are being told. Wait, is that what you asked me? I forgot what you asked me.
No, you're good, man. I was just talking about the collaboration, but I had a
The collaboration is
I
just always about making sure that you're telling the story that you all want to tell, and who ultimately gets to decide what that story is. I think it's ultimately in the director's hands, but I think the director will
can
have
only
an
do so
idea of
much.
what'd you say?
The director can only do so much.
Yeah, but also the director has to let what's being created be created, and if it
Totally.
takes the story down a slightly different path or highlights different aspects of the story, then I think you have to roll with that. You know,
Exactly. And
it's just like being on a team. Like you have to just kind of roll with what you're given. I mean, one of the things that I love about being an actor, and one of the things that I wish more people would learn, is that actors are criticized constantly. We're always being told to do it different, do it better, do it worse, do it sadder, do it happier. We're always being criticized, so we're really good at accepting criticism. We can just take it. It's not personal.
mhm,
It's about getting the story told as well as you can. And
totally.
other artists in my field are a little less. They don't roll with criticism quite as well, and I think it's one of the.
Yeah.
It's just crucial, and I think it's crucial in everything. I think you have to be able to accept criticism, and you have to be able to give it
Mhm.
in a way that doesn't make people feel terrible about themselves.
Totally, man. And hey, going off that point, in your personal opinion, what do you think is more important to say? I don't know if important is the right word, but what do you think is more important, character or story?
Story.
100. That was quick. Okay, please
I
explain.
am absolutely fully in support of the Aristotelian form of storytelling, just because plays have to be kind of simple because people only see them one time. Uh, I mean, and this is just in terms of plays. I think you can do a lot more complicated stuff with television and film because now we can rewind. You can rewatch episodes easily.
Yeah, totally.
That's changing the way we watch things. So complicated is different now. It's like watching TV is like reading a book now because if you don't understand something in a book, you can always flip back and try to figure out what it was you
Yeah.
missed. Same with TV shows now. I feel like in theater, what makes us special and separate is that you cannot rewind a play. You can't go back. It has to be quite simple and quite clear because people are only hearing it and seeing it one time through. I forgot what you asked me, so I forgot my point. What is my
So
point?
how about in television and film? Do you believe that character or story is more important?
Oh, I just prefer events. I like Ibsen's take on, stories are an accumulation of events. And if you look at his plays, they're action upon action upon action upon action. Someone's entering,
Yeah.
someone's doing something to someone. I don't love character studies so much anymore because I'm tired of the self. There's so
hmm
much focus on the self in our culture. I'm a little less interested in self, and I'm more interested in events and how they affect people and how other people affect other people.
It's like get over yourself.
That's kind of where I'm coming from. I think
I
there's
feel
been
it.
such focus on the self lately. I mean, think about it. Selfies. Everybody has their own websites. Everybody has their social media pages. There's just so much focus on self, and I
On
feel
the
like
self.
it's just not good for people to focus on self because the world and other people are so much bigger and better than
Totally.
self is. All the danger lies when you get too much inside yourself. That's where the danger is.
Yo, I have a question. In going off of the self, do you feel that the ultimate accumulation of other is being in an a cappella group?
Well, I do have a weakness for acapella.
I
Because
do know.
I was in an a cappella group in college, and it was my favorite thing I've ever been a part of.
Favorite, like straight up, hands down. You can say that with like 100%.
Oh yeah,
Favorite thing you've ever been a part
the
of.
work that it took to sound good and to sound as one and to sound like we were together it was so much work, but it was so worth it. And it was about subverting the self. The self was not important. It was in service of the group always.
Always.
And why did you ask that? Are you an acapella geek?
No, I just knew that you were interested in acapella, and I wanted to understand your interest for acapella, and also ask. Hold on, before you get into that, is Pitch Perfect a good movie
I've
in your
never seen
opinion?
it.
You've never. Okay, never mind then. Okay, so tell me also is it pronounced the Zumbis?
The Zumbis.
The Zumbis. Where did that name come from?
I've never talked about this in an interview before. This is so fun.
Dude, go crazy.
Oh, was it?
Talk to me about the Zumbis.
The guys I met in that group are just the smartest people, the kindest people. It was so much. We got together and we were committed to making good music. That's all it was. I mean, that's all it was.
And that's pure right there, right? That's pure.
Yeah. And I'm sure it was goofy and dopey and silly and corny and all that stuff, but my gosh, it was fun. That's it, man. You know, acapella thrills people in a way that is, I can't put my finger on what it is.
How have you never seen Pitch Perfect? What's the deal there?
I don't know. I mean, you know what? I think it came out when I was a little too old. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, Anna Kendrick really wasn't doing it for you.
Well, I'm a lot older than she is, and I just don't know. I just missed it. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a young person's movie, I think. And I don't mean that to be.
You should check it out and tell me what you think.
Because if I had seen Dirty Dancing, Dirty Dancing was, I think, my version of Pitch Perfect, maybe.
It's very different. Very different.
Oh, very different.
Don't knock it till you try it, my friend. Don't knock it till you try it.
Don't knock what?
Pitch Perfect.
Oh, no, I love Dirty Dancing. Do you not like Dirty Dancing?
Oh, no.
Are you knocking Dirty? I think you might be knocking Dirty Dancing.
No. I've seen it. I've seen it once. I've seen the second one. Second one is pretty stellar. I'm just I think you're right. I think I was a little bit too young for Dirty Dancing. I think you're very right. It's a generational thing. However, I think
Dirty Dancing is kind of like what Pitch Perfect was. It was just like a musical, spectacular movie. You know
yeah,
I mean?
Totally.
I just missed it for no reason other than I just missed it. You know.
So all I'm saying is you should check it out because I think you'll think it's I think you'll dig it. I think you'll dig it. Is all I'm saying.
Wait, I have to write it on my wall because I write
for sure. Dude, that's so interesting. Can you explain how did you learn about the wall strategy? Because when you were explaining your writing process, it's almost as if you're painting a picture, and I think that is so fascinating. And you've actually inspired me. I have a wall that I write on now, man. Yeah. I think it's magical because you don't have to flip back and forth. You can just see the whole thing. It's literally as if you're painting. So how did you learn about that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. You know what? I wonder if it came from when I was watching Homeland a long time ago, and Carrie Mathison, the main character on Homeland, would like pin all these things on walls, and all these cop shows. They always have this giant wall with all the photos and all the suspects, and I just kind of started doing that. And I have a wall in my office, and I put up all these giant pieces of paper, and I write my plays kind of on the wall, and eventually, as it takes shape, I transfer it to my. Usually I write it on a notepad first, and then it gets transferred from the notepad into my computer. That's kind of how I do it.
That's sweet. I like
that.
And
I don't like to sit and write. Like, that's not what I like to do. I like to
stand and write.
But I don't like writing, and I'm not great at writing. I wish I was better at writing, but that's the way it goes, you know? I'm good at it. It just takes me a long, long time to be good at it.
That's so crazy. I can't. That's just so crazy for people to hear. It's like a writer saying, I hate writing. Like, what?
Well, a lot of writers love writing. That's why they're so good at it, you know, probably.
So I remember in the meeting you say that you rewrite the first 20 years of your life. What makes you say that?
Well, Kathy Pelletier said that. She's a writer from Northern Maine, and she's a novelist. And I think she told me once that you kind of you write the first 20 years of your life because that's when you learned everything from your heart and from your head, both. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, you stop learning as much from your heart because it's too painful, and you start to just kind of process the world through your head, which is a way. It's like self-preservation. For the reason is self-preservation.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think most of life is reliving versions of high school over and over. You know, you're dealing with
the Bowling for Soup song, man. High school never ends.
Who said that?
Bowling for Soup. It's a song. You should check it out. It's like high school. Yeah. You're right. High school literally never ends. It's just
you're always dealing with the same dynamics. You know, in group, out group, feeling left out, FOMO, being hurt, being angry. It's all the same. You know, in a lot of ways.
Totally.
Managing it.
Totally.
Managing all that stuff without hurting people is what I think you get better at as you get older. Hopefully.
Managing that stuff without hurting people. I like that. That's That's
Well,
very.
I think as you
That's
get older, you try to not hurting people becomes a focus. Like, at least I think it should.
totally. Hey, man, what's a cod piece?
A cod piece?
What's a cod piece? I have no idea.
You're asking because of something rotten?
Yes.
Well,
What's a cod piece?
okay, so for people who don't know, I was in this musical called Something Rotten on Broadway in 2015, and it was a musical about two guys named the Bottom Brothers. It's set in Elizabethan times. It's basically an Elizabethan tap dancing rock and roll musical,
That's
and
just like the coolest string of words I've ever heard.
it was really fun. Casey Nicholaw directed it. Brian Darcy James, who is, I guess, best known in the musical world for Shrek, I am learning. But he played my brother. He's my older brother. I was his younger brother. He plays like a theater producer, and I play a writer and a poet. And our biggest competition is Shakespeare, played by Christian Borle. And it was so
God, I hate Shakespeare.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the, I think the second number in the show is God, I Hate Shakespeare, which makes a lot of people who hate Shakespeare fall in love with the show. But cod pieces, we wore, I would call it like steampunk Elizabethan costumes. So they were very exaggerated. And we wore these cod pieces that were giant. And a cod piece is basically, the covering over a man's stuff.
Mm.
And it made for easy access if you had to go to the bathroom, I guess. I honestly can't remember what they're for. I've looked it up so many times I don't remember right now. So you'll have to all look it up. But I just told you about cod pieces. So that's how
my life has been enriched.
I wore one every night for about a year and a half.
Are they uncomfortable?
No, it's just pants, and then the cod piece is on top of the pants, kind of.
You know,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. I get it. So, my friend.
It had something to do with also hygiene, but I really can't remember. I honestly don't know.
So I have a question that I'm very interested to hear your answer to, man. So when writing, I'm really interested in how you find the balance between making work for other people versus making work for yourself. Because art is very intrinsically motivated. You have to be really motivated to be an artist. So I was wondering, how do you find that balance in making art for others versus making art for yourself?
I don't know what you mean.
As in commercial art that people relate to, art that people like. Because I feel like in some sense there's part of the creative process. You have to figure out how to get this message so that a lot of people relate to it. So I'm wondering, how do you balance that concept of making art that will sell and be popular versus making art that you feel is very true to yourself?
Well, as a playwright, I've only made plays that are true to me, so I haven't really written plays for money.
Very cool. Very cool.
I think that's when I started to realize that there was a little bit of a hole in the theater when people would tell me, I've never seen a play that features someone who's a farmer before. It's been a long time since I've seen a play. Because middle of the 20th century, there were a lot of plays that featured rural Americans. They were even in the what was it? Our time was the 30s, I think. And then you had Oklahoma, Most Happy Fella, Little Fox. No, yeah, The Little Foxes by Lillian Hellman. There was just rural America was something to aspire to, and it was represented. And now it's not. It's not something to aspire to. It's a place to leave. And a lot of the things that you do in rural America, you cannot do in cities. Do you know what I mean?
You can't ski in New York. What do you think this is?
But I guess just realizing that when I started to realize that I had written something that not many works of art were about, as it got popular, I guess people just told me that I filled a void, and we didn't know there was a void. Do you know what I mean? We didn't know there was a void of stories about people from, who work in plywood or, romantic. It's a collection of romantic comedies that feature not hot people who work real jobs. You know what I mean? Hard
and so blue
collar jobs. that require a lot of
Yeah, and
intelligence.
my
You know
thing
what I
about that,
mean?
man, is that like you in Hollywood and like what we're seeing and in the mainstream, it's all like you never see a fat lead because it's like people don't want to root for that, you know? And you never see like an unattractive lead. And or I'm not going to say never. Of course there are some, but in the what sells is attractiveness and some
Yeah.
and a lot of people like you're saying they don't think that farmers are attractive. So I just think it's just
Well, like you said, fat. One of my plays features a fat man, and he's the romantic lead, but the audience doesn't really accept him as the romantic lead and doesn't even realize that they should be paying attention to him until it's pointed out that he's the
yeah.
star of the show. Do you know what I mean? And that's like playing on people's prejudice because you see a fat person, you think, oh well, they're not going to be the love story, so you pay attention to the other thing that you think is the love story, and then you find out it's not, and that's just kind of a little wake up call for
I
people.
think that needs to be talked about
Um,
more.
but I don't really think about the whole commercial and non-commercial. I don't think there's as much of a divide as I think when people make things that they believe in and that they're
It
passionate about,
shows.
that's when magic happens. And if you make it for money, you know what? Sometimes it does. Magic does happen when you're being paid. I mean, Charles Dickens wrote his stories because he was paid to write them. And I don't know, there's a great R&B singer, I can't remember who it was, who said that he hates it when people criticize him for selling out because he wants to sell out because he wants all of the seats sold at his
And that's
concerts.
such an odd
So
juxtaposition in my opinion. And I was wondering how you navigate that.
I don't think about it that much. I see lots of not-for-profit, non-commercial theater do really commercial plays, and I see commercial theater take chances on what you would consider something that's not commercial. And I think that I don't know how I feel about that because I don't I made my most of my career in the commercial theater, and I don't think so. If I think commercial theater is a bad thing, then I'm poo-pooing everything I've done for the 4 Broadway shows I did. So I don't know. I don't like it when people say, "Oh, it's so commercial." I mean,
It's just putting you in a box.
I think people mean unimaginative or just trying to.
Like
I
pander.
don't know. I don't see the problem. I don't really like the when you make distinctions, you're elevating the non commercial over the commercial, and that's dangerous too because then you're making it seem like if you work in the not for profit or non commercial
Totally.
world that you're better than, and that's tricky because I don't think that's true.
Very interesting. Yeah, cool. I like it. I
you know,
like it.
I've seen a lot of really bad theater. I've seen a lot of really bad theater at the not-for-profit theaters
Totally.
at not in non-commercial theaters. So I don't I don't know how I feel about that distinction. I've never fully understood that distinction, so I don't know. I mean, theater's tricky. You've got to get butts and seats, so you have to sell tickets. So ultimately, by
Yeah,
definition, it
totally.
kind of has to be commercial. So
So I want to
I don't know.
transition into top.
And also, if you're not interested in making stories for others, if you're only interested in making a story for yourself, that's a big problem to me. And that goes back to my thing about the self. Like some artists say, I don't care what other
Mm,
people think. I'm doing this for me. I'm like, well, then I don't want to work for you because I don't want to do it for you. I want to
exactly.
do it
And
for
and
others.
that's kind of really my biggest like what I'm trying to understand is just that finding that balance in others versus self because obviously you have to really pour yourself out into this work that you're doing and and that other artists are doing, and so it's just I feel it's strange even when you do something for that is yourself for others. I think it's a very odd thing for people when that doesn't work and they don't get butts in seats like you're saying.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I'm against people who make work that is about themselves or about the self, that is an exploration of the
Totally.
self. That I don't want people to think that I'm against that at all because I'm not. I just think that there's a lot of it right now. There's a lot of
Totally.
self-examination, a lot of navel gazing. Hopefully, I feel like now that we've all spent so much time with ourselves
Hmm.
because of this COVID-19 situation, that we all cannot wait to get out and see other people and
Exactly,
listen.
man. And that's
You
why
know,
I love doing these podcasts during this because I feel like a lot of people just really want to listen, and I feel like they don't get that a lot. Hey, man.
yeah, it's really cool of you to do because listening is so important and so fun, and we're all so into creating. Like you asked me what I was doing with this time. It's just been nice to have time with to let stuff come in on me. You know what I mean? Like I'm reading. You know what I'm doing right now? I'm reading the Grimm fairy tales because they're so good, and some of them are so weird, and some of them are so dumb.
It makes
you know
you really
like,
question how Disney got to where
sense.
they got. It's like, wait, you pulled that from that?
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Yep.
Yo, I had a
Yep.
question, man. What was it like working on Shrek the musical? You don't have to answer it very long. This is a personal question. You did it?
No, I didn't work on Shrek.
I've been lied to.
No, I wasn't interested.
Gosh darn it.
That's okay.
Never mind then. Hey man, so do you believe in muses? Like, and if you do, like, what would you say your muse is? Like, is your husband your muse? Is there some really impactful individuals that are your muse? Do they just come? Are you your own muse? Like, feel free to take that wherever you want.
Oh, that's a good question. I think that's an interesting. You know what? I think I'm gonna be honest and say I think I am my own muse in a lot of ways because I like putting myself in situations that I would like to be in. Do you know what I mean? Like it's fun to imagine myself in different situations. I never thought about it like that, but I guess that is a form of a muse. I would say my muses are as my plays begin to take shape. I start to imagine my friends who are actors in the roles, and they become the muse that kind of carries me through. And what's interesting about that is that, like, right now, I'm writing a play about two young women. And I have a really good friend, Kelly McAndrew, who's a really wonderful actress. And she's my muse for this play, even though she won't be playing
You
these
have
parts.
her in mind.
She is kind of.
You have her in mind.
Huh? Yeah. And I have another actress in mind for this other role. As I've worked on the play, they've just come into my mind and they become the people who kind of become the real life person who I base these stories on. Do you know what I mean? And eventually they will disappear, like Kelly will eventually disappear, and the character will become something new. Does that make sense? Like a fictional character will take enough shape that Kelly will disappear and this
That's really cool. Yeah,
shape.
exactly.
Does that make
totally.
sense? I would say I use my friends who are actors who inspire me to get started, and I use their strengths as actors. I kind of write towards their strengths, and then as the character develops, they fade away, and the character becomes somebody that I can visualize.
You were an actor before you were a writer, right?
And then they start talking.
You were an actor before you were a writer, right? So, do you think that being an actor before being a writer helped you create believable characters?
I don't think there's such thing as believable or unbelievable characters because I think that it's up to the actor who's playing the role to make things believable or unbelievable. Amazing actors can play things that appear on the page to be unbelievable. Great actors can make those things believable. Great bad actors can also make things that are perfectly believable on the page seem unbelievable. So I don't know how I feel about the term.
Okay, let's. So when you're writing, you set an intention, yes, and
keep going.
With that intention, the intention is to create characters that people relate to, and that an actor can like, so you were the writer and you are giving the actor the tools to make that character believable. You are giving them the words and you're giving them the personality. So in being an actor prior to writing, do you feel that knowledge allowed you to, or not even allowed, but assisted in the process of creating these new, because you said that it's like there's a muse and then it becomes something new. So in becoming something new, like, do you think your own experience as an actor and understanding how to get in the minds and really making the characters you are portraying believable, do you think that skill has assisted you in being a writer?
Yeah, now I think I understand better. I do. Yeah. I think so. I think what I would say is that being as an actor, I know my way around plays from the inside in a way that people who are just writers or people who are directors or people who are designers don't. Actors know their way around plays better than anybody.
Totally.
because we live inside them. And so that's what I think. I think all actors should write at least people. If you're a stage actor, you should write at least one play.
I think
because you know how to tell a story on the stage, and it's just an incredible. I just don't think people realize that when you've lived inside a play, you just know how they work. You know what works and what doesn't work, and